Welcome to Secret Story. Fortune had smiled upon us, and we finally closed on the house of our dreams. It was in one of the nicest neighborhoods in the city and the schools were top-notch for the kids. Best of all, in my mind at least, was the kick-ass backyard which backed up to a beautiful greenbelt. The backyard had an amazing pool with a swim-up bar, and privacy was provided by old-growth hedges that were fully matured. It was our own little private oasis in the well-to-do suburbs. After a few months in our new place, we discovered that our little piece of paradise was plagued by a rat. Our next-door neighbor, Sarah, was what many would call a Karen. Sarah was the type of person who was used to getting her way. A strong-willed woman, she bullied her husband. She bullied her friends. Until we moved in next door, her family had the biggest house on the block and the fanciest car. They held the best parties. Their kids excelled above everyone else's. Sarah targeted her wrath on me and my family from the welcome party the block threw for us when we moved in. The backhanded compliments with a smile. The constant comparisons with attempts to one-up on everything. No one on the block really liked Sarah, they feared her. She was president of the PDA and the HOA. She was a member of the in crowd of the neighborhood and a key to getting into social events such as book club, bunco, etc. People knew that if they got on her bad side, their access to these perks of their perfect suburban life may vanish. Sarah did not like us for many reasons. We had just as much money, if not more than they did. Our house was bigger. Car nicer. My graduating senior had a soccer scholarship while hers had a tennis scholarship. She could not one-up me. Furthermore, other than the parties, my wife and I did not participate in many neighborhood social activities as they just were not our cup of tea. Sarah held no sway over us, and it drove her mad. Also, she did not like the fact that many in the neighborhood now looked to us for things that she was formerly the sole possessor of. Being a doctor at a local hospital, I worked 3 straight days of 14-hour shifts and then 4 days off. My wife worked during the day and our daughter was in school, so I was home alone on my days off. I typically would spend my free time lounging in the pool and sipping some drinks from the bar. To set the mood, I would usually play some reggae music or some other beach-themed tunes. Although we had tall hedges that concealed the backyard and provided privacy, our next-door neighbor Sarah could see everything from a window on her second story. There was just enough break between some of the hedges to give her a clear view of the pool. On more than one occasion, I caught Sarah spying on me while I lounged in the pool. Sarah worked from home, so it was not uncommon for both of us to be in our respective backyards alone during the day. Me in the pool and her doing whatever the hell it was she did in her backyard. On more than one occasion, Sarah would yell over the fence for me to turn down the music while I was in the pool. I never had the music playing loudly. She just did not like the fact that she could hear it. One day, she even called the cops about the noise. After a brief discussion with the boys in blue who showed up to my doorstep, they informed Sarah that my music was well below noise nuisance levels and that if she had a problem, she should do the neighborly thing and talk things out. At the next neighborhood get-together, things between Sarah and I got a bit contentious. She kept trying to push my buttons. But I kept my cool. Every underhanded insult she threw at me was deflected by a debonair counter. She could not get under my skin, and it drove her nuts. Over the next few weeks, relations between us and Sarah continued a downward spiral. We received a warning from the HOA about our cat being outside without a leash. I read the letter and literally said, "What? Pet on a leash violation? Who the puts their cat on a leash?" I knew this was instigated by the next door. One Friday, I was in the middle of one of my work breaks and my wife and daughter were out of town for a 3-day soccer tournament. I could not go with them as I had to go back to work on Sunday. I was lounging in the pool on my favorite float. And I saw Sarah spying on me. This was in the privacy of my own backyard, so no one could see me. No one, that is, except for the snooping next door. I had my sunglasses on, so Sarah could not tell that I was watching her watch me. To piss her off, I turned up my music a bit louder than usual. This brought her to her window with increasing frequency. I decided to push things a bit further. This seemed to keep her attention. Instead of popping back and forth from the window, she stayed and stared. Finally, she abruptly left the window and I burst out laughing. It's not like I normally float around the pool jacking off all day. It was just another way for me to get under her skin. My peaceful pool time was soon interrupted by the ringing of my doorbell. Over and over the bell rang. I hopped out of the pool and grabbed a towel. I wrapped it around my waist and answered the door. Sure enough, it was Sarah and she looked pissed. "Your music is too loud. I need you to turn it down," bellowed Sarah without so much as saying hello. "Well, hello to you too, Sarah," I said. Sarah gave me a snotty look and tersely replied, "I cannot concentrate with your loud music blaring. You need to turn it down or else." "Or else what, Sarah?" I snarkily replied. "You going to call the cops again? You know they said the music was fine." Sarah crossed her arms and nearly shouted, "It is not fine, it is too loud." Being one to always keep my cool, I invited Sarah to come inside to check out the pool for herself. "Let's listen to the music to see just how loud it is." Sarah and I went to the backyard and walked to the pool. I went to the poolside bar to turn on the music. While there, I offered her a drink. "A drink? It is 9 o'clock in the morning. Don't you think it's a little early for a drink?" Sarah condescendingly disapproved. I looked at her and said, "Why not? It's not like you actually have anything to do today." I knew this would make her blood boil. Sarah's face began to turn red as her anger swelled inside of her. "I work very hard, thank you very much. I am lucky enough to be able to work from home and don't have the luxury of floating around my pool all day." I laughed and retorted. "But you do have time to spy on me from your upstairs window. Don't you? I saw you watching me this morning. Did you like the show?" Sarah blushed and was befuddled at being caught. She tried to speak but stammered on her words. Before she could get out another word, I said, "You know what your problem is?" Sarah looked at me and her head. "Oh please, why don't you mansplain it to me?" I looked Sarah in the eyes and said, "You don't know how to have fun." Sarah scoffed, "Ha! Fun? Of course, I know how to have fun. I was president of my sorority, I'll have you know." "When, like 20 years ago?" I countered. I thought Sarah's head was going to explode. "I am one of the most fun people there is. I'll have you know." Sarah said the words so forcefully, that spittle shot from her mouth when she spoke. Boy, was she pissed. I told Sarah, "I highly doubt that. If you are so fun like you say, why don't you prove it?" Sarah looked confused and said, "Prove it? How the hell can I prove that?" I wryly looked at her and offered, "Why don't you prove how fun you are by coming for a swim?" Although she was a raging, Sarah was an attractive woman. She was in her late 30s and worked out daily. Sarah had the typical toned arms and shoulders that most aging suburban moms get from hitting the gym. To my surprise, she said fine. "Fine?" I said. "Yeah, fine. I'll show you fun. I am a very fun person," Sarah said in a huff. Sarah stood in the water at the shallow end of the pool and defiantly said, "You see. I know how to be fun." I was still standing in the poolside bar and shook my head. "I'll admit, I really wasn't expecting you to do that. You surprised me, so bravo. But I really would not count standing in a pool with your arms crossed as having fun. Unless that is what you consider fun." Sarah wrinkled her face. I poured a few shots of tequila and put them on the bar. "Why don't you swim over here and have a little something to loosen yourself up? It's on the house." Reverting back to her natural Karen mode, Sarah admonished, "You do realize that it is not even 10 o'clock in the morning yet, you heathen." Reacting to her answer, I smiled at her and threw back a shot. I let out a big satisfying, "Ah." That hit the spot. "No worries if you don't want any. That just leaves more for me." "Karen." "Karen. What the hell did you call me?" Sarah shot back. Sarah immediately began to wade towards the bar and then swam the remainder of the way when the water got too deep. Sarah sat on a stool in the water at the poolside bar, grabbed her glass and threw back a shot. She slammed down the glass and coughed as the tequila burned her throat. I laughed and handed her a lime wedge. She quickly the juice of the lime to cut the tequila backlash. Sarah and I continued our witty back and forth, constantly trying to top one another with each response. After downing a few more shots, our conversation became a bit more civil. Sarah had become more comfortable and was now relaxed as she sat half submerged on the poolside bar stool. I could see a dark patch. I wondered if it was trimmed or natural. During the course of our conversation, she noted that her husband was out of town on a business trip and that her daughter was out this weekend at a tennis academy. I noted that I was alone too, as my wife and daughter were away for a 3-day soccer tournament and I could not go due to it overlapping with my work. The wheels began to turn in my head. Being a bit buzzed from the shots, I hopped into the water on an adjacent bar stool and playfully turned the conversation in a new direction. "So, I saw you spying on me earlier this morning." Sarah's face reddened and she replied, "I have no idea what you are talking about. I was working all morning until your loud music broke my concentration." I laughed and poured another round of shots from the rapidly emptying bottle of tequila on the bar. "Bullshit, I saw you bouncing back and forth from the window all morning. Curiously, however, whenever I had my out, you seemed to stay at the window for quite some time. What's the matter, hubby not doing it for you anymore?" "First of all, I was not staring. I just caught a quick glance and it confirmed to me that you are a boorish oaf. Second, my and my husband's life is none of your concern." Wanting to get under her skin, I noted, "Yep, I can see it now. You keep under lock and key and give it to Alan, her husband, once in a blue moon. Most likely missionary style, and you are happy for him to get it over with as soon as possible." Sarah scoffed and threw back another tequila shot. She did not say anything, so I figured that I must have hit a nerve. With a wry smile, I coyly said, "You know, I have not got to see anything you have to offer. That doesn't seem quite fair." Sarah laughed and said, "First of all, don't flatter yourself. There really wasn't much to see." I laughed and said, "Good one." Sarah smiled at my acquiescence to her joke and then noted, "Secondly, nice try, asshole. I think you have already seen enough of me as it is." Sarah blushed and gave a slight smile. Trying to give her more encouragement, I said, "I'll bet you are beautiful. Why not let them out to play? No one can see us back here and you have already seen. Prove me wrong again like you have done so many times already." I looked at the clock and saw that it was nearing noon. Neither of us had eaten, so I hopped out of the water to grab some snacks from the poolside bar fridge. My interactions with Sarah had excited me. Sarah seemed to take notice as well, considering that she could not take her eyes off my. I set some snacks on the table and hopped back into the water. I must have jumped into the water a bit too quickly and the resultant wave made Sarah slip off her stool into the deep end of the pool. I swam beneath the water and grabbed Sarah. She could swim on her own, but I wanted to help since her slip was unexpected and she had quite a bit to drink thus far. Together, we made our way to the shallower end of the pool until we gained our footing that I stared into her eyes and asked if she was okay. Sarah looked back at me, and I was surprised when she kissed me on the lips. She had a drunken smile and said, "See, I told you that I could be fun." I kissed her back and said, "You are right. You win. Neatly trimmed. Question answered." She was so used to always getting her way and having people kowtow to her. She found this interestingly attractive and wanted him to take control. God knows her husband would never have the courage to do this with her. I prying ears by the sound of the waterfall and the loud music that had originally initiated today's little escapade. I held her in my arms and said, "Now, isn't this better than always fighting with one another?" Sarah turned her head and smiled. "You know, we do have all weekend to be alone together." To be continued.